On Thursday, Health Canada announced it was ending a policy that prevented sexually active gay and bisexual men from donating blood to Canadian Blood Services. This announcement comes nearly 7 years after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised to eliminate the ban during the 2015 election campaign. Health Canada had previously eased the rules from some members of the LGBTQ community. Prior to Thursday's announcement, gay and bisexual men were prevented from donating blood unless 3 months had passed since their last sexual contact. Rob Oliphant is a Liberal MP from Don Valley West who lost his partner to AIDS 30 years ago. He says this was a step forward in human rights and ending stigma against the LGBTQ community. He joins me now. Thank you very much for your time today.
Great to be with you, Mark.
So let's talk about why this took so long. Obviously, it's an important move. It's a significant move, but many people felt that this was a very strong example of discrimination for such a long time. So why did it take so long to lift the ban?
Well, I think I answered that in 3 ways. You know, as a politician, I understand that the bureaucracy moves slowly, cautiously, is very small c conservative by nature. And they had a strong and an important vested interest in Canadians having confidence in the blood system. I understand that. However, as a gay man, I also recognize that there was a degree of scapegoating, a degree of almost fear-mongering around the issue of HIV, and it was seen when I was young, certainly as a gay disease, which is not around the world, and it was seen as a disease which had a certain moral stigma attached to it. And I think either consciously or subconsciously that affected decision makers over the last few decades. Even in these last 7 years since Prime Minister Trudeau made this commitment, it's been a push. And it's been a push by people like Randy Boissonneau, now Minister, Seamus O'Regan, myself, people from the NDP and the Conservatives, and activists across the country who have continued to push Canadian Blood Services to first make the request to Health Canada and then for Health Canada to respond to it. So I think it's a combination of appropriate caution and care and inappropriate stigmatization and prejudice.
That's a very interesting way to put it. So let's talk about what this means. The lifting of the ban applies only to monogamous gay men. So what does that mean for others? And is this fair?
Well, it's actually it's deeper than that, because what this does is it lifts a blanket ban on a type of person, a man who has sex with other men, bisexual or gay men, and instead it looks at behaviors. So it doesn't look at identity, orientation, or anything like that. Instead, it looks at what are the behaviors that could put that person at risk for having blood that is unacceptable to the Canadian Blood Services. And that happens. I mean, the reality is my mom was a lifelong blood donor. As she got older and took more medications and had certain conditions, it became less good for her and then finally unacceptable for her to give blood. So there have always been limitations on who can give blood. This was the only time there's been a limitation based on an orientation, a sexual orientation. So what this does now is it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is, certain behaviors would put the blood system at risk. Now, do I think science is still a little behind on this? Yes, I do. I think that there is there are difficulties. We went through hepatitis and the tainted blood scandal in Canada. We understand that, but I still think that the Canadian blood industry is still somewhat conservative, and I will still keep pushing them on that. But right now, the good news is it's no longer a blanket ban on gay men. What it is, it's a ban on certain people who everybody will be asked the same questions, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of the way they have their relationships, but be about their behaviors. And I think that's good. It may surprise some straight people who have never been asked those questions. It'll be interesting to see what happens on that.
Do you think this will help end the stigma that people may have towards the LGBTQ community? And what does this mean for you? How do you look at this decision this week? How do you respond to it?
It's been one long march. I mean, it's over 53 years ago that the former Prime Minister, Trudeau, decriminalized homosexuality. And since then, it's been a long, slow, steady march. It's not done yet. But things like equal marriage rights change people's attitudes. If they can get married, maybe it's not all bad. And my church, I'm a United Church of Canada minister. In 1988, we started ordaining openly gay and lesbian ministers. That caused people to wake up. Now, not all faith communities are there. I'll still keep pushing on them. But I think generally society continues to move. And I actually think Canadian Blood Service is a little bit behind the people, say, in my riding in Don Valley West. I think they're way ahead of them. And, most Canadians have moved on this. They look at there's not only a generosity or an acceptance, it is a generosity towards LGBTQ community. But we're not done yet. There's still comments, there's still those kinds of things. Anybody who's different, whether it's racial difference or ethnicity difference or linguistic difference, orientation, identity, gender differences, those are still cause for people to be discriminated against. We're not done yet. Yeah. Laws push, but the reality is people need to have their attitudes adjusted. Slow process.
All right. Rob Oliphant, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.